Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. If you are tuning in because you voted for this video, thank you so very much for your input, and here I am delivering. Unlike some of our members of Congress. Damn, shots fired already. I work in fashion production in New York City for a pretty well-known brand that I would say is sustainable-ish. They're doing a lot to reduce their wastewater, carbon emissions, as well as use recycled materials and only natural fibers. This has definitely given me a unique insight to best practices for production, as well as what materials are best to use for what case scenarios. So in today's video, I'm going to be breaking down how fabrics are made and then also when should you wear what. I'm going to try to keep this like a little bit more casual since this is my literal job. I don't want to get like too caught up in the jargon of everything and losing you and just trying to make it super professional. Like, this is chill. We're having a conversation. First things first, I'm going to cover synthetics. Synthetics are anything that is not growing from the earth. It's not a renewable, and that covers any petroleum byproduct. It's everything from polyester to nylon to acrylic. Those are probably the three that you are most familiar with, and those are all oil-derived product. When oil is drilled for, there's the actual crude oil, and then from that you can make a ton of different things for super, super cheap. That's why a lot of fast fashion companies such as Shein, Forever 21, rest in peace, actually don't, Temu, I can't even think of other fast fashion companies that outwardly use such shitty materials because I just don't shop there and it's out of sight, out of mind for me. But you will see polyester maybe in things from Zara and H&M as well. So there's crude oil and a lot of different things can be made from it, such as Vaseline, petroleum jelly. You're probably very familiar with that and you've probably used it yourself. I have. How polyester is then made into clothing is a pretty interesting process. This also happens with recycled water bottles, which we'll get into in a minute. But it is these chips of petroleum that are plastic, essentially. They get shipped off in whatever color and then they get sent off to a mill. I just want to make sure I'm really clear here that the color of those plastic chips that get sent to the mill has little to nothing to do with the actual color that the yarn or the fabric or the end product garment is going to be. Just wanted to make sure there wasn't any confusion there. A fabric mill. So you have your raw materials producer, raw materials mill, you have your fabric mill, and then you have your actual factory. So that's the supply chain, very rough breakdown. There's obviously more moving parts and pieces to it, but I want to keep this more digestible for you. So your raw material in this case scenario is going to be, let's just say polyester. Everyone's pretty familiar with that. So you have these plastic chips that come from your raw material, and then you ship those off to your mill. The mill is then going to melt down those polyester chips and spin it into a yarn. Then from that yarn, they're going to make fabric. Now, the thing about polyester and why so many brands clamor for it, besides it being so extremely cheap, is that polyester can be manipulated into tons of different fabrics and it can mimic those same fabrications, all while being only polyester. So a lot of times you'll see CVC or CVS, cheap value cotton. So it's cotton and polyester blended together. It's a way to cut down on the raw materials cost and make it a lot cheaper for brands to mass produce. However, things such as nylon, polyester, acrylic, we know shed microplastics and they do not biodegrade in our systems, our ecosystems. In fact, they're in our waterways, our food systems, and thus our bloodstreams and our organs. So overall, not great. That's the rough idea of the process of anything that is truly synthetic, is that it basically is oil and is basically plastic. I'm not trying to demonize synthetics as a whole. I think that would be an overgeneralization and would miss the benefits that they do provide, and things such as protective gear, whether it be hard hats or goggles or gloves, hazmat suits. When it comes to actual protective gear and you don't want it to break down, then yes, of course, a synthetic makes sense because it is a very robust material. But when you're spinning polyester yarn into sweaters that then pill and shed and end up in our waterways, that is not the best use case for that fabric. I feel so smart right now. I feel like I'm low-key giving a TED talk, but also it's like a job interview at the same time. I don't know. So you can see why synthetics are great because they're so robust, but at the same time, if you spin them into certain kinds of fabrications, they are going to shed a lot of their microplastic filaments. Real quick, if you're learning anything from this video, go ahead and give it a like down below. I've talked about synthetics more in depth before. I'll leave that video linked up above so you can check it out. It's really talking about what the most sustainable option for all of these fibers is, which I cover in that video. I'm going to piggyback off of virgin synthetics with recycled synthetics. So that's anything like water bottles or fishing nets that have been repurposed, or any sort of plastic that is captured in our waste management system and then is able to be recycled. Now, that is a very nuanced conversation in and of itself because not all plastic that gets recycled is recycled. It's something like 2%. It's really, really, really low. And that's why I always advocate for reducing your consumption before recycling as your first option. I'm talking about having a Hydro Flask, baby, some sort of water bottle that you carry around that you can refill and you don't have to keep buying cases and cases and cases of water bottles. Recycled materials are a little tiny step better because you're not having to drill for oil to then get these products, to get this material to spin into yarn. It already exists, which is okay, but again, it's still going to have the same properties as any other synthetic, and it is still going to shed and never biodegrade and be harmful to our ecosystems. So no, I definitely don't think that we can recycle our way out of this crisis and just make every single piece of clothing ever out of polyester or out of recycled water bottles. I do think it's a good start to tackling the waste crisis, but at this point, really what needs to be done is just to produce less of it in the first place. I actually have some workout gear from Girlfriend Collective, and that is made out of recycled water bottles, aka polyester. Let me grab it. I have 2 pairs of the Girlfriend Collective leggings, which again are made out of recycled water bottles, and you can see that they do still shed. They do still have a lot of pilling from the thread even, and they're not indestructible. I think that's the main thing that I want to point out. I coached in this pair of leggings a lot, and when you're spotting for gymnastics, like I was on my knee, like supporting, spotting through back handsprings and stuff, and just like really putting them to the test of wear and tear. And even though they're made out of a synthetic fiber, that does not mean it was ever indestructible. There's a hole in the knee here. So it just goes to show like, okay, yeah, polyester might be great for like safety wear, but when it comes to everyday clothing, there truly just is no need because it's never going to be fully indestructible. And also, people get so tired of what they buy before it even reaches that point. Like, instead of recycling things, yes, we should capture that from our waste systems and dispose of it properly or find some other way to break it down, but we should not really be producing more of these things at all. Next, let's cover semi-synthetic materials. These are materials that first start at the raw material stage as a renewable. It could be hemp, it could be bamboo, some sort of pulp, and that's how it starts at the raw material stage. What happens next at the fabric mill is that it's then treated as it's a synthetic. So again, it's going to be chopped up, melted down, and spun into something. Well, I guess it wouldn't be melted down. It's then going to be treated like a synthetic. So it's going to be coated in chemicals to be able to achieve that fabrication and that kind of feel of whatever it is that the manufacturer really is going for. And these are things like elastane, lyocell, Tencel, There's so many trademarked things out there that those are the three that are just on the top of my head, but I'll leave a more comprehensive list because there are a lot and everything is kind of under like a trademark or a patent because it is specific to the technique and the fabrication that you then get afterwards. But elastane, for example, is a dupe for spandex, but it's semi-synthetic. So it does break down, but it does not decompose. So the difference between like biodegrading and breaking down and decomposing is that biodegrading means like, yes, it will go back into the earth, but decomposing means it's going to go back into the earth without harming the environment that it is breaking down in. So because it's been treated chemically, that means that it's going to obviously leach out those chemicals eventually when it's disposed of. I would say the best use case for a semi-synthetic material or synthetic man-made material or synthetic natural material, whatever you want to call it, is replacing polyester. So anywhere that you have a CVC blend, replace it with Modal. Modal is a really big one as well. And that's like a very soft, buttery kind of like t-shirt material. And then of course, replace spandex with elastane. So in my mind, it's better to use man-made synthetic materials for like your everyday wear. I think something that gets a lot of use and is kind of a basic maybe or a staple really should replace synthetics with those semi-synthetics. So at least it's made from renewables and it's not going to litter and damage the earth to the same degree that a fully synthetic material will. So that means like putting it in trousers, in t-shirts, in bodysuits, things that are like stretchy, but also you want them to be soft and buttery. Semi-synthetics are also really, really great replacement for things like workout gear. I think I should have mentioned that for sure because it kind of wicks away the sweat. It is a little bit more breathable than like cotton leggings might be. And they also kind of mimic that same fabrication of like the stretch, the wicking, the breathability, and those sorts of properties. That I think is where semi-synthetics can move the needle forward and help us replace synthetics entirely. I'm not sure as of yet if there is a recycled man-made material. I'm sure as like production of these materials becomes more and more prevalent, the recycling of them also will. It just like naturally it's going to happen when a market becomes oversaturated with one sort of fabric or yarn or technique. Hopefully, it should be recycling them. I think replacing those kind of polyester materials in everyday wear is the best use case. Next up, and my favorite, is obviously natural materials. We're going to go a step further and classify between natural materials and organic natural materials. Natural materials, as we briefly covered, are anything that is grown and that is renewable. So again, bamboo, hemp, even cotton, linen, silk, wool, cashmere, the list goes on of things that can come from a renewable source and don't require drilling or extracting. To take it a step further, organic, in case you haven't heard this term in clothing before, it applies the same way to food. It means it wasn't treated with pesticides, artificial fertilizers, or any antibiotics or hormones when it comes to like animal byproduct that will affect your body and your health when you either consume it or wear it. We could definitely talk about the difference between regular and organic all day long. It actually has a huge impact on our ecosystems. So if you have the privilege and the means to buy organic natural materials, I definitely think voting with your dollar and kind of like putting your money where your mouth is the way to go. So anyway, these things are grown. Let's take cotton, for example. This is a great example that everyone is pretty familiar with. So cotton is grown, whether it's treated with pesticides or not, we're not going to talk about that. Then your raw material is then shipped to the mill, and the mill is then going to spin it into something that's either knit or woven based on the order that comes through. Then, of course, that fabric goes to the factory to then either make your t-shirts or your sweaters. I find natural materials, depending on the fabrication, are definitely best for everyday wear, but also really breathability and layering. And I say that specifically because when you have these natural materials, they have these capabilities already kind of built into them to either retain heat or be super breathable. So I think if you're looking for weather dependent fashion, Things like cotton and linen and silk can be really great for like the hotter months. But also on that same token, cotton and hemp and cashmere and wool can also really do you well for the colder months. So the thing about seasonality and fashion and dressing for the weather, it is very important to know what your clothing pieces are made out of, because it's going to determine if it's going to help keep you warm or if it's going to help keep you cool. And knowing what to look for is important and can also just make you enjoy your fashion pieces that you're spending money on. So a quick rundown, I'd say cotton is really great for basics and button downs, and cotton poplin is really great for these kinds of lightweight, super summery button downs. But cotton can also be really robust and made into denim, which is a very, very thick, heavyweight sort of fabrication that can also withstand the test of time and be used and worn over and over and over again. And it's going to kind of give that nice, subtle, worn in kind of look without looking like it's falling apart. Also, it depends on like where you're buying from. If you're buying like 100% cotton jeans or if it's like a CVC blend, again, those are things that should be denoted on the care label. So definitely check your contents and care labels when you're shopping. Things like linen and silk are so breathable and airy and lightweight for summer. I love, love, love a good linen long sleeve when I'm trying to have sun protection, but also don't want to be sweating to death. So anything that is linen, I love that as a long sleeve. If you're looking for like a summer sweater or a summer cardigan, silk. Silk is going to be your best friend because it is so lightweight, so airy, but when it's like blended with a yarn, it's definitely going to still have a knitted look, but be super lightweight and super fun to kind of play with like a juxtaposition of a sweater during the summer. I could make a whole separate video about like fabrication and seasonality and what kind of fabrics you should wear when, but I just thought this video would be great to tell you what kind of fabrics should be in what kinds of clothing. And I definitely think natural material should be in every kind of clothing, but definitely your true and tried basics and staples and things like your denim, that's going to be it. I think your more fashiony sort of items, you'll probably see man-made synthetics, if not just full synthetics. But again, I really want to encourage you to move away from depending on synthetics in your clothing. It's really not great for you. It's not great for the environment in the long run. And there are other options out there. And I think brands are waking up to the fact that consumers want to push away from having synthetics because of the havoc it's wreaking on the world. If you guys enjoyed this video, go ahead and leave me a like down below. It really helps me out and lets me know that you're enjoying this content. I do upload every single Sunday if you want to subscribe and catch me next week. Until then, don't forget to be kind to yourself, others, and the planet. Bye.